Maynard kind of scolded me. He said, it's okay to have goals. He goes, but enjoy the journey, because at the end of the day, all there really is the journey. Once you get to a goal, I'm sure you've noticed this, you reach a goal and then you go, okay, I'm here, now what? So it's just a constant thing of moving on to the next thing. So that is the motivation, I guess. I mean, why would anybody stay in a situation that doesn't make them happy? And or doesn't create value.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Lynn Nicholson. Lynn, well, he's a seeker. As a young trumpet player, his search for a better solution to playing outdoors led him to discover the MF protocol. His superhuman upper register landed Lynn his first professional gig with Bill Chase, and then as a featured member of the Maynard Ferguson band. While Lynn's life has taken some unpredictable twists and turns, he's always followed his heart and remained true to his inquisitive nature. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, and welcome to an exciting episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. I am joined by, to me, a legend in the land of trumpet world, and it's Mr. Lynn Nicholson. Lynn, I am so happy that we could get together today.
Happy to be here, Jose.
Oh man, it's been. I was just thinking about it this morning. The first time I heard you play, like many trumpet players, was back on your work with Maynard, because the first Maynard album I ever bought was Chameleon, and I remember sitting there listening to it and looking at the liner notes. For those of you who are old enough to remember liner notes, some people have never seen those in their lives, but you're going, who the heck is this? And then finding out who you were, and then kind of following your career as you went on, like with Thad and the Toshiko Akiyoshi and looked back in bands and stuff like that, and the work you've done. I mean, you helped to kind of really in many ways at that stage, it's like, wow, this young guy is just blowing the roof off of this, and I think it was really inspirational. So when you think back on your career, were you aware of some of the impact that you were making at that time, being kind of at the forefront of some of kind of this last guard of a big band, and especially that kind of high energy playing?
Not at all. I was lucky, in retrospect, I was lucky to catch the tail end of what I call the big band era. But I had no idea. I was just trying to, every band I got into, I was like the worst trumpet player, but I had the best high notes. So I was scrambling to keep up. Yeah. Well, it was a skill, and that was, I guess the first question I wanted to ask you was, is this something that you came, I hate to use the word natural, but this is playing the upper register something that came more naturally to you? Or was it something that you had to do a whole lot of, figuring out? And then we're going to get into the next phase of this once I get your answer to this. So was this something you kind of stumbled on, or was it something to actually conscientiously kind of try to develop a methodology about? I stumbled on to what is now called the MF protocol when I was 16 or 17, a junior in high school. Marching season in the Chicago area, and our mouthpieces were sticking to our lips from the cold and ripping skin off. And one day I decided this is no good. So I did some shifting in my playing apparatus, and my squeaky little high G that I had turned into a roaring double C in about 10 minutes. So I knew I was onto something, and didn't take long to perfect it. But I stumbled onto it. I was lucky. Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things that is kind of interesting to me is that it's something you stumbled. So you say you stumbled on it, and you continue to refine your aspects and your analysis in terms of the playing mechanics. So when you were playing more regularly, doing those higher profile gigs and working professionally, did you find when did you find the need to start to really dive into the mechanics of what you were doing and to develop a more thorough and sort of methodical approach to your playing?
Well, the high notes were always there. I had some chop trouble. When you play using the MF protocol, you play with very relaxed chops, so you end up doing damage to your tissue because your chops are relaxed instead of tense. So I always had the high notes, but at the expense sometimes of the chops. And take one look at Maynard's chops. He did the same thing because he is the Maynard Ferguson protocol. So anyway, there was in that regard, I had to be cautious of certain things. I could damage myself by using my air. I have very enthusiastic air, let's say, and I could I could do damage, and I did do damage with it. I shredded the vibrating surface here in Las Vegas, and it took like 10 years to heal. I couldn't really take time off because I needed the money, but wasn't much fun, but finally it did heal. So I always knew how to do that aspect of playing. And then the rest is, if you can play in the upper register, and when upper register, I mean above high G, when you can play up there consistently, no matter what's wrong with your chops, the rest of the horn kind of just falls into place.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So when, speaking of kind of like this, because the MF protocol, I got turned on to that. I just remember seeing a post on Facebook or something like that, or one of the forums. I was like, oh, well, Lynn's got something going on, and checking it out, and then checking out your X piece and some of the other stuff that you've been concocting in your mad scientist laboratories down there. And I found it so precise in your explanation, and everything followed a very logical progression, which I find that for a lot, whether it's in music or sports or anything, sometimes you have people that have very high level of skill, but they can't tell you what they do or how they do it. They just, I just pick up the horn and I blow, or I put the ball in the basket. But you're able to articulate things in such a precise fashion that it indicates that you really did spend some time diving into this methodology and doing it in a way that allows you to then to disseminate it to more people. So, when you think about that process, is that something that you've always been, is that the kind of personality you have that you like to take things apart, dissect and put them back together, find creative ways of doing it, or was that like a necessity?
Well, both. I've got this inquiring mind, which gets me in a lot of trouble, but yeah, I'm always trying to, I call myself an optimizer. So you give me any problem, just about any situation, and I can optimize it and make it the best. And sometimes making it the best is the lesser of two evils, but still it's the best it can be. So yeah, so yes, I had to in retrospect is when I discovered all this protocol, the ability to articulate the protocol. At the time, I was just playing. I was doing one of the worst things you can do with the protocol, and that was I had a mouthpiece that was way too big. So I was up against the wall and didn't know it. And I should have known it, playing with both Chase and Maynard. I should have seen it, but I didn't, because I was getting good results with the big mouthpiece. But I had to do a lot of chop maintenance. Anyway, looking back, I should have played a much smaller mouthpiece. I should have played a small V-cup, which is one of the key elements of the protocol, like Maynard did.
Yeah.
And by the way, Chase should have played one too. Chase was always running out of chops. The great indicator of chops, of correct mouthpiece is if you can take a week off and come back and play fine, then your mouthpiece is the right size. If you come back and struggle, then your mouthpiece is too big.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people don't want to accept that because it defies convention. But who defied convention better than anybody? Maynard. So I just look at the master. I was lucky to work with him when he was really in what I call his second prime. Birdland days, first prime, Birdland Kenton, that first prime. Second prime, I thought was Chameleon, the Rocky days. Yeah, it was fun working with Maynard and helping him when I could, helping him, if you can imagine that. Just do what he wanted me to do, which was modify his mouthpiece a certain way and do things like that. And I think his sound and range were outstanding in the Chameleon days.
Yeah.
A good combination, a good balance of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was not fortunate to be able to see him in the earlier days, but yeah, I definitely was there from those Chameleon days forward, or you know, going onward. And yeah, I remember the first time I heard him play is just like, yeah, live. I mean, obviously I heard the albums. I'm like, yeah, but this is phenomenal. And then to be there in the audience and go, holy cow! I mean, that sound was just, it was amazing. And I don't think there's, well, yeah, it's a unique sound. Everybody's got their own unique sound, but there's a very, very special balance of just that monumental core to his sound. It just, it didn't matter whether he's playing a low F sharp or a, you know, a D or E above double C. I mean, it still had that presence. So, you know, like being in that space, you know, whether it's playing with Chase or Maynard, or, you know, I'm sure that, you know, when you're working with Thad and the Akiyoshi band, you know, you're surrounded by really great players. Being in Vegas, you're going to be surrounded by really great players. Who are some of the other players that, you know, when you were working with, and you would be, man, you know, that guy, that's inspirational. That's an inspirational kind of player for me.
Well, I mean, I came out of the gate kind of hard and fast, you know, with Chase and Maynard. So there's the top two right there. The Chase gig was highly coveted in the day, and I never thought I'd even have a chance at that gig. That was my first gig. And then Maynard was my second favorite at that time, and that ended up being my second gig. So those two are at the top of the list. And then, you know, I worked with so many good players. I hate to eliminate anybody, but in LA, especially in 1975, after Maynard's band, I learned so much that year. And some people like Bobby Shue and Gary Grant, they kind of took me under their wing and helped me stumble through the, you know, the trumpet part, because of my high notes were still very useful. I don't even know where to begin. LA was just that was like back in the heyday of LA, and there was, everywhere you went, there all rehearsals and gigs and everything else. The players were just phenomenal. People I never even heard of before. But you know, there's you work with the Chuck Finleys and the John Audinos and the Ray Triscaris and those kind of people. And I look at myself and I go, what the heck am I doing here? You know, but it was, I guess, for the high notes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it is a skill, you know, and it's a very specialized skill, and it helped you to forge a career, you know. And it's funny because so many people talk about you know, how the relative lack of importance of high notes. Some people even like, you know, he's just a high note jockey. Well, you know, but when you need somebody with chops, you definitely need somebody with chops. You know, it's yeah, especially the demands of modern music has changed so much, and a great part because of people like Maynard and Chase, where what a players is demanded to do because of the music. You can't, it's, even though they say, the cash register is everything up to high C, still, if you want to be kind of, in those top call positions, you got to have a little bit more in the tank than that. So when you were in the LA scene, how did you manage the, like, I guess the better question is, how did you make that transition between the road work and then kind of transitioning into the LA kind of studio scene, and then the La Vegas show scene, which are kind of, those are a different kind of vibe than being out on the road and grinding.
Totally different. Yeah. Well, I wasn't a big fan of the road. I don't know. The idea of, what we did 300 miles every day on a bus. And then I think our record was, I forget exactly, Bob Summers would know. I think it was 42 days in a row or something, one-nighters. You just get kind of burnt. I'm sure everybody's told you that. And Maynard was phenomenal, and Chase was phenomenal and all that, but the road, wow. But so anyway, went to LA, and the way I transitioned was I made as many rehearsals as I could. And as I said, a couple people took me under their wing and helped me out. And a couple of the people who would hire, they heard me and they wanted that. So it just took time for me to acclimate to sitting down, reading music for the first time, and playing it correctly the first time and the 10th time if needed. I did not do a lot of recording, but I did a lot of live stuff. I think one week, I was trying to remember, I think it was 27, I had 27 playing engagements in a week or something like that. I can't even imagine how I did that. That's like 3 a day, right? And then some. Yeah. But with all the traffic and everything in LA, it wasn't easy. But that's what it took. It just took a lot of playing, and I really became a much better trumpet player in that year in LA. But right before the recording that Toshiko was going to do in December, I had a chance to contract Buddy Rich's band for Seattle 18 hours later. And so I contacted 11 people because Lloyd Michaels and the group mutinied on him, which, Buddy was, a volatile personality. Anyway.
Why would people mutiny on Buddy? Come on.
Yeah, but I really like Buddy a lot. He, no bullshit at all. He was just, gave 110% all the time. He expected you to too. So that's fine with me. I'm good with that. So anyway, I left LA for a while. And then at the time he had his club in New York, and I was going to go play lead in his club there. That was our agreement. Well, on the way back across the country, he went bankrupt, or the club went bankrupt. I don't know how it worked exactly, but there was no more gig. So I ended up living in New Jersey, which is where my wife was from. So I lived there for a short time, and then I got on Thad Mell's band. Worked in New York some, but not too much. But Thad Mell's band, we did like almost a 4-month tour of Europe that summer, 76, recorded the Live in Munich album. Well, you talk about a diverse group of jazz musicians. That was the band right there. Incredible. I mean, wherever you turned, it's some monster. But you'd be amazed every night at the solos, and Porcino was playing lead, and Earl Gardner, who went on to do some amazing stuff too, was playing third, and I was playing second, and it was just quite the musical experience. Totally different than Maynard's band, because you never knew what was going to happen next on that band. But it was great. It was great. So I guess you could say I didn't really adapt well to the whole scene in LA. It wasn't really to my liking. I don't know what I was expecting, but apparently it wasn't what I was expecting. And I think Bobby Shue said, you go into a studio situation and it's 95% boring and 5% sheer terror. And I think it's the boring part that got to me. I like a good challenge, or I did in those days. But boredom is, man, why do you think I left Maynard's band after a year? I got bored. And I don't dislike it or anything like that. It's just, what's next? I'm the Zen guy. I was like, okay, I've done that. What's next? And I've had to, that's been my whole life like that. So anyway, I did Thad Mel, and while I was on Thad Mel's band, a friend of mine, one of the people who helped me get on Maynard's band, John Disney, he got me the gig at the Dunes Hotel playing lead. So, okay, I'll do that for a while. So I went there, learned a lot in Las Vegas, but like I said, I hurt my chops after about 3 weeks and then had to live with that for almost 10 years. So I adapted. Las Vegas is, I'm sure other people have told you the same thing. Las Vegas is like a factory job. And it's, there are good things about that. You get to sleep in the same bed every night. We made good money. I was on the relief band. I was at the Dunes for a year. And then I got on Johnny Haig's relief band, which was another coveted gig at the time because we played the house band's night off. So we had that variety. Every night was different. And plus we made a lot more money than the house bands. And of course the hotels end up figuring out a way to get rid of that because of the cost, which they did. So the showrooms went down to 6 nights instead of 7, for the house band's night off, which was our bread and butter.
Right.
So anyway, that became, Las Vegas was kind of, to me, the way I expected LA to be. Except I knew I wasn't going to, the relief gig in Las Vegas was very similar to what I expected LA to be. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. But I did leave LA at the time. It just was not that palatable. And I loved playing with Buddy, and the thought of playing lead in his club in New York and sleeping in the same bed every night. Wow. That was great. And wow, Buddy was just, a total Marine, just got everything right every time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds interesting. I mean, it's kind of there's a dichotomy, there's the desire for the predictable, having a same place to sleep in, that consistency of having a home base as opposed to the being on the road. And then there's the desire to have new and challenging experiences. And that's kind of the dichotomy that exists, that, when you're on the road, it's easy to become frustrated because you don't have that home base where you feel like you're just kind of floating in the wind. And then people that get the steady gigs are like itching to get out, itching to do something different. And I think it's our ability to mentally and emotionally and spiritually deal with those situations, that there is no such thing as the perfect situation. So, what are some of the mechanisms that you have in place, and the kind of thought processes that you've gone through to make the best of the moment, to make the best of the situation that you're in at the time?
That's a good question. I'm not very successful at it sometimes, I'll tell you that. Pima children. Mm-hmm. Comfortable in the chaos, comfortable with uncertainty. I think that is the key to a happy life. And Krishnamurti said, one time he asked the crowd, he goes, "You know what his secret is?" And the big hush over thousands of people, right? And he goes, "I don't mind what happens." So I'm not good at that. I'm, astrologically, Swava has it all explained why I'm not good at that and everything, but I continue to try. And through meditative practices, and even something as simple as being in the outdoors, seems to pacify me in ways that are beneficial, let's say. So that's my coping mechanism now. I wish I was further along that path, but wanting to be where you're not is that's a fool's errand.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle says that stress is being here and wanting to be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think that that's a huge part of it is, uh, yeah, there we're all struggling. You know, we're all trying to make sense out of this life. But the one thing that impresses me is that a lot of people allow themselves to get, you know, they get stuck in situations that they're unhappy with, but they stay stuck in those positions. And you know, you have been in positions where you have not been happy, and you made the decision to make changes. And like, you know, if we go back to the Maynard, or you know, the Chase gig, you know, there are a lot of people that would have, you know, given their left eye to be in that band, you know, or any part of their body. You know, there are people that
Yeah.
Maynard gig, you know, back in the day. I mean, if you were a trumpet player, if you were a jazz trumpet player or lead trumpet player, you know, that was the gig you wanted to have, you know, and, you know, or to be in LA. So you were in these coveted positions, and for whatever reason, you decided, you know, as much as I like this, I want to go somewhere else. And you were able to make those shifts. And a lot of people aren't able to do that, or aren't able to do that without some level of regret or remorse. So, yeah, to me, that's really that is a sign of a more enlightened approach, whether what you even think about it's like a high enlightenment, or just, you know, like you say, you know, kind of getting past the bullshit and just, hey, this is life, and I've got to live it the way that I want to live it. So, you know, what motivates you then in your life, in your pursuit? I mean, what are your goals, or your visions, or your aspirations of Lynn Nicholson?
Well, goals at this point are a lot different than they were back then. Maynard kind of scolded me. He said, it's okay to have goals. He goes, but enjoy the journey, because at the end of the day, all there really is the journey. Once you get to a goal, I'm sure you've noticed this, you reach a goal and then you go, okay, I'm here, now what? So it's just it's a constant thing of moving on to the next thing. So that is the motivation, I guess. I mean, why would anybody stay in a situation that doesn't make them happy? And or doesn't create value? There's a lot of people, I'm sorry to say, especially in today's world, where there's not much value being created. It's just a bunch of, you know, advertising, and man, I mean, there are so many middlemen out there who don't create anything. They just help the people who do create something market their goods or whatever. And of course, I'm a horrible salesman, but that's what it amounts to, really. And if I could snap my fingers and be some way at all, it would be, I don't mind what happens. That. So whatever comes up, fine. And when I look back on things, everything, I see that the universe, or God, or however you want to look at it, always has a better plan for me than I could figure out. All the way back to when I was in high school. I was an engineer. You asked earlier why I was so scientific and everything. I was going to be an engineer. I was going to go to the Air Force Academy, IIT, or MIT. And then the universe dumped this protocol on me. I was trying to keep from ripping skin off the mouthpiece. Instead, it gave me an upper register. So that was not nothing was as it seemed. So at that point, I decided I'm going to be a trumpet player for a living. And my band director, you know, oh, you're never going to make it, and blah, 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 blah. And in those days, it was like, what do you mean I'm not going to make it? Of course I'm going to make it. I never thought twice about failure. As I get older, it's easier, you know, failure is, you don't have quite as much, I don't know what it is, tenacity or something. Concept's still the same, but it's not as forceful and vibrant. You know, it's not retaliatory. It's not like, what do you mean? You know, it's not like that. It's like, okay, yeah, you might be right. So anyway, that happened. Then I end up getting on Chase's band, and I got fired off of Chase's band. And at the time, I was 21, so I was like, okay, he told me they, meaning the other trumpet players, wanted to get a friend on the band. And okay, I get it, that's fine. And no sooner did I get off of Chase's band, I got called for Maynard's band. And had I stayed on Maynard's band, on Chase's band, I'd probably been in the plane that went down. So that happened, I think in August of 74 or something. I remember I got, sadly, a friend of mine, John Emma, I got him on the band as guitar player. He died in the crash, but he and D'Artagnan Brown came around to the one of our concerts, and he goes, oh man, he goes, you're so lucky. He said, we have nothing, nothing left on the band. He says, you're way better off here. So I didn't plan that. I didn't plan to get fired. You see what I mean? Yeah. And it didn't bother me too much when it happened. But I didn't consciously think to myself, wow, if there's a better plan out there than I could come up with. But every time, if I rely on my intuition and just kind of go with the flow, doesn't mean you lie down and play dead. Not at all. It's not that. But go with the flow. Okay, there's clues all the time that come along. And I don't think we pay enough attention to the clues, but sometimes we do. And then good things happen and you move on. When I was on Maynard's band, I have kind of a big regret leaving so early. Sandy Sandberg and John Disney were the two people that got me on the band. And Sandy told me, he goes, afterwards, he told me, well, I think you may have left too early. But Maynard had big plans for me. And I didn't find this out till way after. But looking back on the relationship I had with Maynard, he treated me like an equal on the band. He did have one time he said, you learn to dance, he said, I'll make you a star. And I was too hip to learn how to dance. And then I heard feedback from other people later. I'm not getting into it, but he really had big plans for me. So, but it was time for me to move on. My mind said it's time to move on. And so I did. So I didn't trust my intuition. And I went into the situation in LA. I mean, there's all different kinds of ways to look at it. There's parallel universes, maybe. There's, who knows how it all works. My mind can't comprehend anything like that. People believe what other people say. I think that gets us in a lot of trouble. I don't believe what anybody tells me anymore. I mean, if I go to the, take my Jeep in to get it fixed, I believe the service manager when he tells me, because we're on the same page. We're both off-roaders and love the outdoors and everything, and he's become a friend. So I believe what he tells me, what he believes to be true. But as far as other things like people who profess to know more about God, for example, than I do, what makes you think you know more than me? I mean, connection with source is very personal, and I go straight to source.
Yeah.
And I look back, and again, I don't want to impose my opinion on somebody else, but I'm certainly not going to listen to somebody else's opinion about something that's dear to me and works.
Yeah.
And works, because you can only sense the presence of whatever it is going on out there by going there yourself, in my world. So I think a lot of people are just worker bees. They go to work, look forward to their lunch breaks, their weekends, their 2 weeks off every year, whatever it is. Not much to look forward to this last couple of years, but anyway, that's fine. I think all that's fine. It's just not where I am.
Yeah.
So as far as where I'm going from now, I'm looking, I call it looking for a wave to ride, and it has to be a tsunami. So I look for something like that. Had I stayed on Maynard's band, my life had been totally different. But coming to Las Vegas, going to LA, then coming to Las Vegas, Thad Mills band, Toshiko, Don Ellis, all these bands I played on. I learned a lot about trumpet and relationships, and I met I'm probably the only musician in history who never drank, never smoked, never did drugs. And I took some prescription pain meds when I broke my leg in 1988, when I broke my ankle in 2011, and when I had my total knee replacement in June of 2021. So, but not horrible amounts, I still have plenty left. And I would take like a quarter of a tab, instead of the whole thing, because they just put me to sleep. But anyway, I think you see my point. We all have like different paths that we go down, and to be like I used to do so much. My mind would come in and say, I want to do this. Mine was always about, we were poor. We grew up poor. And I didn't know it at the time, but in retrospect, we were poor. So I was always, my folks, my mother especially, was always worried about money. And I got some of that programmed into me, I think. So I was always worried about money. I still do to some extent. So I'm always trying to figure out, how can I create value and maybe make some money at the same time? So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but money's not at the top of the list.
Right.
Boy, I sure meandered a lot on that.
That's good. It's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. And I've said this countless times, that this kind of conversation, this is, if someone is in music school right now, or someone is contemplating having a career as a professional musician, I think these are the things that they need to learn before they make those decisions, before they make those commitments, because this is the reality of what it means to be in the music industry. These are some of the things that you have to keep in mind. Some people are willing to, some people are doing it for the artistic integrity of it. Fantastic. That's great. Some people are just in it for the buck. Okay, if that's your decision, that's your decision. But I think that having clarity of purpose and understanding that, if you sell your soul, you may have the mansion, you may have, all the downloads, but you're still going to end up being miserable at the end of the day. And if you're in it for just providing value, if you're in it to express yourself and to be true to who you are, then whether you have that monetary or the fame or that sort of stuff, at the end of the day, it really is less important. It's that you're just being true to who you are, and that to me is the most valuable thing. If you can live your life true to who you are, then the rest of it's gravy. So but I think these are the kind of conversations that a lot of people need to have. And I think especially like with you, that having that unique perspective of having gone through the arcs of, music was not you didn't want music to be your full-time thing at the beginning, then it was your full-time thing, and then it's not your full-time thing anymore. So it's like going through these different phases, and you're still Lynn. And I think the problem a lot of people have is that they tie their identity to what they do.
Exactly.
What they do being an expression of who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, that really ties you down.
Yeah. I know for myself, I've made shifts through my life several times, and now that I'm a little older, I'm able to look back and go and see how it all ties together. All those decisions I made that at the time I felt like I was kind of like completely turning my back on aspects of my life, and in some ways I was, but the things that are most important still are there. So it's like, oh, these are just all different expressions. They're facets of my personality. And so I don't have to be tied down to any one expression. It's just, I get to choose which one I want to bring to the forefront, at any given point in time.
Yeah, I think, if more people could do that, we'd have a lot happier, a lot happier mankind, let's say.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to go back for a second to your talk about engineering, your engineering concepts. Is that what kind of got you into the whole mouthpiece design and tweaking and the gearhead approach to things? Because I know like you said, you helped Maynard with some of his mouthpiece tweaks and stuff like that. So when did that fascination with the mechanics of trumpet playing, like the physical equipment, bite you, and where did you gather those resources from?
Well, that started pretty much when I shifted over to the protocol way of playing upstairs. It just became fascinating. And so like I said earlier, I'm an optimizer. So what can I do to optimize this? So it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to shift over. I had some very rudimentary tools. I would cut a mouthpiece cup and stuff like that. I'd stick the drill in a vise and then put the mouthpiece in the drill and spin it and cut it with a knife and polish it with whatever I could find and stuff like that. And I made the mouthpiece I played on Chase's band, I actually made out of an old York trumpet mouthpiece. And yeah, it was a great piece, very wide, 0.745 inches inner diameter. I still have it. People talk about playing a big mouthpiece. Well, that's big. Anyway, so I did all the protocol stuff on that. The caveat is, of course, you have to practice more, and not practice, chop maintenance. So back to the engineering thing. That has allowed me to be a good optimizer. I can analyze a situation quantitatively, not with some, qualitative wish in my head, but I can look at it and go, okay, this needs to happen. So my first step was I bought the drill bits and the hand reamers for the throat. Because I always thought, like, this mouthpiece is so stuffy, and I started on a 7C, by the way. No, it was a 7, a straight 7. And once I had a trumpet teacher in Naperville, Illinois, Bud Cater, and he was an instrument repairman too, and he had a lathe, so he cut me a mouthpiece, and it was shallower, and I was like, wow, this really works good. And so then that got me started on realizing that you don't have to just buy a mouthpiece from the store. You can go, I was, 16, 14, probably 14 or 15, so somewhere in that range. And that's when it started. And my analytical mind then, in school, of course, I took all the math and the physics and chemistry and all that stuff, thinking I was going to be an engineer. And after the protocol kicked in, I just dropped all that. It was no longer interesting. And so I got on Maynard's band, and after about, I'm guessing it was 2 weeks, something like that, he knew that somebody told him I had the reamers and the business. He came back with his Holton mouthpiece, which was a prototype, and he said, Lynn, can you put a 19 hole in this? And I measured it, and it was like probably about a 24, maybe a 25 hole. And I said, well, how about we, go to a 23 first, or maybe a 22? And he said, no, I want a 19. I said, okay. So crank, 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 crank. And it took a whole lot of brass out of there. And I had used 2 reamers. The one got me to about what was it? Maybe a 22. And then the other one took me to the 19. And it was a tapered hole. So at the one end, it was a 16, and the smallest point was a 19. And I'm thinking, man, did I just mess him up? That night, it was my birthday. It was January 20th. Yeah, that's right. It was about 2 weeks, because I started on January 6th. Oh, see how that works? Anyway, he played the loudest triple C I ever heard in my life at the end of Hey Jude. And it was one of those events. I think about it right now, just talking to you, and sends shivers up my spine. It was a triple C that didn't know it wasn't a double C. You know what I'm saying? One of those. Yeah. I've never heard one before or since. I heard a recording one time of, I'm in the back of the audience, it was Hey Jude, so I'm playing stuff out there. And what a relief came over me. It was like, whoa, good, I didn't mess it up. So then at that point, then we started like opening backboards a little bit more, and shaving down the shank so it fit closer to the lead pipe. I had this idea that there was too much turbulence being created or something. I'm not sure it was true, but Maynard and I both played right up against the lead pipe, just allowing a little bit. I used to shave it down until it hit, and then file a little bit off the bottom so it wouldn't hit, the end of the shank. All primitive stuff. And you can, if you look carefully on some of the photos from that generation, you can see the shank on his is brass. It was never replated or anything. But so it just became a fascination. Is there an ultimate mouthpiece for you? Yeah, I think there is. Nobody finds it because they don't approach it logically. They approach it with, I call it trumpet voodoo. A lot of mouthpiece makers have this kind of, this has to be this, and if you don't do this, then this happens. And okay, but are you a trumpet player exactly? I mean, what are you? Let me hear you play. And of course they can't. I'm not gonna mention, I don't mention any names because my filters are on, right? A while back I went to one of these highly rated mouthpiece makers, and I answered a whole bunch of questions, and then said it's going to be like a year or two wait and I talked to a couple of his clients, and they said, yeah, it took 2 years for me to get the thing dialed in. And so I called Jim New, who I'd already worked with at Canstall, when he was at Canstall, getting the first prototypes of the X-Piece made. And Jim and I talked for maybe 5 minutes on the phone, and he sent me, he sent me like several prototypes. And I'm allergic to brass, it really bothers me. I can't tell how mouthpiece plays unless it's played. So he sent it to the players and then sent me the pieces. And Jim is phenomenal. He'll answer my questions. He'll give me some advice maybe sometimes, and I go, okay, or I'll say, no, do it this way. And there's no argument, there's nothing. He does it. I have so many prototypes. I've learned so much since being with Jim New because of all the stuff he's taught me by doing the work that I wanted to get done. And he's such a nice guy too. And we drop ship from there. He handles all the shipping and everything. So it's just a totally nice guy. And he's got this huge collection of mouthpieces, but squeaky wheel gets the oil. He's not a good salesman either. So he doesn't do huge business. He does well, but he doesn't do a huge business. But that's the kind of thing I like in a person. I like a real person who doesn't try and tell me how to do what it is I know I need to do. If I have a question, I'll ask the question. Past that, let me screw it up myself. But anyway, so I have all kinds of prototypes, since more prototypes than ever before. And one of my, I'm meandering again. You want to reel me back in?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Bob Reed is one of my favorite people, right? We tried to get a mouthpiece for me when I lived in LA, and I just couldn't, I don't know, we just couldn't get it quite right. But Bob told me two of the most valuable pieces of information I didn't know at that stage of the game with trumpet. First, he said, you don't buzz into the mouthpiece, you blow air into the mouthpiece, and the vibrating column of blah, 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 whatever, causes your chops to vibrate if you apply the air correctly. And I thought for a minute and tried it, and that's exactly right. So these people who free buzz and do all this, free buzzing encourages chop tension. Buzzing on the rim, like the reversible rim and stuff like that, that encourages you to use your air properly, because that rim won't speak if you're highly tensioned. And certainly won't speak, it won't allow you to vibrate all the way across the rim for a big sound. Anyway, that was point number one. And point number two, he had this thing called, I don't know what he called it, but he took the cylindrical section out of the throat on my mouthpiece. And I was like, whoa, this is great. So I used to do that to all the mouthpieces. And all the way up through to the point where I started playing really big throats. I used to play like a 23 or something. And then currently I usually play around, it depends. It depends on the mouthpiece, but and which prototype it is, but usually somewhere around 18 or 19, something like that. So it's not as critical when you have a bigger throat. But Bob said, well, that keeps from boxing up the sound. And boy, was he right about that. And kind of a funny story, he called me back, I must have been a couple of years ago now. And he said, somebody was asking me about hourglassing the throat on a mouthpiece. He says, and you said it, you know, they heard it from you. And can you tell me what that is so I can replicate? I said, Bob, that came from you in 1975. Oh, okay. So anyway, it's funny how the technical aspects of things that they're often overlooked because people don't want to try them. This I'm not trying to sell anything. This is my RR mouthpiece, which it has a screw that goes into the throat. It's an 18 hole in the mouthpiece, and the screw interrupts. It reduces your airflow. Well, some people think that it's going to screw up the sound because it makes the throat asymmetrical, right? Who says that acoustics is symmetrical? In fact, I guarantee you it's not. You could, anyway, I could go on and on about that. But those, and another one of my favorite myths is the faster air makes you play higher. And in 1977, when Charlie Davis was helping me get out of my chop mess, I said that to him one time. So, well, you know, faster air makes you play higher, right? He goes, no, faster air makes you play louder. And it's a simple test. You just hold a middle C. I did it on video on one of my Mythbuster things on YouTube. But these are valuable pieces of information that are often overlooked. And faster air, it does indeed hold the same size. I'm going to state it here just in case somebody had missed it. But hole size is the same. Everything is the same. Nothing's different. Lung capacity is the same. Take a deep breath, same breath each time. Play it loud. You'll hold it for maybe 15 seconds. Play it softly. You'll hold it for maybe 45 seconds, maybe a minute, depends on the person. What does that tell you? The louder version, the air had to go faster through that same hole than it did when you're playing softly. And I mean, it's an absolute proof. And I've had people like swear at me. Again, I won't mention names, but they're like froth at the mouth. They won't admit that something that is a fact is not a fact. So stuff like that, you know, makes me, I'm very analytical about stuff. And I really don't care if they think that, but it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And the concept of tightening up chops as you go higher, where did that come from anyway? The only thing I can think of is it's from the legit world. And yes, if you play trombone or 1.5 C or something, you have to tighten up. And therefore you have to do chop maintenance and keep your chops really tight. Otherwise, you play the smallest mouthpiece you can. Well, one time we're playing Doc at, let's see, I think it was at Caesars, and the Trump sections, they were talking to him about something before he went on. And he said he had to practice 5 hours a day to stay even. This was back in the early 80s, I think. 5 hours a day to stay even, right? Imagine that, just to stay even. If you want to get better, you had to, well, he's saying, he's talking about chop maintenance. And we just all looked at each other. It's like, well, we didn't say it out loud, but we have lives, you know. there's a life beyond trumpet. And so we weren't laughing at him, but we admire that type of dedication. But in retrospect now, since then, at the time it didn't occur, his mouthpiece is too big, right? And this is Doc Severinsen. So I mean, he's one of my top 5 trumpet players. So I would never, I would never dispel whatever it is he's doing because it worked, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but 5 hours a day, wow, what a buffer that is.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are kind of two things that stick out to me from that conversation is, one, we try to take this process that's occurring inside of us. I mean, inside the horn, inside of us, to make music. And whether it's trumpet playing or actually anything, you have an idea of what you're doing. This is what you think you're doing. This is the way you describe what you're doing, but it ain't necessarily what you're really doing. So, I think that a lot of times what happens with these truthisms that come out is that someone, it's, like you breathe from your diaphragm, or you breathe from your toes, or you're doing this, or you're using this shape or whatever, you're thinking about your air faster or wider, and a lot of times it becomes that's the way they envision the process. But if you actually broke it down and did the science on it, maybe that's not exactly what you're doing. So I think that a lot of times what happens is that it becomes gospel because someone that we respect, someone that we view as an authority. I'm actually reading a book on that right now. Great book on social psychology. If you're perceived as being an expert in something, then you're going, the person that's being influenced is going to buy into that, regardless of whether that person is actually stating fact or not. So I think a lot of times that a lot of what we've had in terms of trumpet pedagogy has, it comes from a good place. I think, it all comes from a good place of trying to help somebody to become a better player. But a lot of times the way that people explain things, if they don't really analyze the processes, it can do more harm than good down the line, because you're actually, you can be leading someone down the wrong path.
Right.
So that's one of the first things that I got out of that. And kind of the second one is you have to be willing to experiment. you gotta like that scientific mind. It's you find something and you play with parameters and you try to find how to optimize things. And certainly, if you want to spend 5 hours a day doing maintenance, great. But what could I do to cut that down to 4? I'm like you. I want to find, my approach to life has always been to try and find the most efficient and effective methodology. It's like, do I need to do see my book here, that like with mindfulness and meditation, it's great. If you can meditate 2 hours a day, fantastic. If you can meditate 6 hours a day, probably even better. But we can't all do that. But the process, the benefits that we get, the measurable physiological, neurological benefits we get can actually be achieved in 90 seconds or less, because that's how long it takes for your the neurotransmitters to change over, and then the brain chemistry to change in between 30 to 90 seconds. So you don't have to do all of this. If you can, it's great. But when you understand how it works, then you only need this much. And if you can work with that much, then it's much more efficient and effective. So I think that, for playing, it's the same thing. It's like, well, how can I get the best results with the least, not no effort, but the least amount of effort, the least amount of investment in that process. So I think that those are really kind of cool concepts. And I think those are things that more people need to consider if they're looking to take their playing to another level.
Yep, I agree. It's it's a matter of efficiency. And then of course the question that you might ask after that, let's say you have all this extra time all of a sudden, then what? You got more time to do what exactly?
Well, well, you can go out and enjoy some of those wonderful outdoor events that you go to. I've seen, man, some of the pictures that you have on your Facebook page, the colors, like even the picture behind you, the colors are just surreal. And I think that you know, if we stop becoming slaves to the instrument, or slaves to our jobs, or slaves to whatever it is that we're slaves to, like it does give you that extra time to actually experience life, to live life. So
Yep,
but
I agree 100%.
that's me and my metaphysical nonsense. So
We all have metaphysical nonsense.
yeah. So I in some ways I hate to kind of go back to Maynard again, you know, but because
Oh, go ahead. That's what people want to hear. I put up a picture from back in the day and get like 500 likes or something, you know. Okay, I wish I had more.
but yeah, you had mentioned one of the things that he talked to you about, you know, the journey and the process. Everyone that I've talked to that's played on his band, you know, or that knew him, had a good relationship with him over the years, you know, they talked about his mentoring, and you know how they impacted them, certainly as players, but especially the guys that were on the band, that there were some tremendous life lessons that were shared, you know, by Maynard to the people in his band, especially, you know, those that he took a huge shine to. So, you know, but if you had to say, like, encapsulate like one musical lesson that you learned from him and one major kind of life lesson, what would those be?
Well, I would say it's enjoy the journey. It's as simple as that. Goals are okay, but enjoy the journey. Christian Murdy was introduced to me by Maynard. I bought my first book thanks to Maynard. And it was called First and Last Freedom. I kind of rolled my eyes, you know, because I was coming out of being a devout Catholic, wandering around Manhattan on Sunday morning, right, while on Maynard's been looking for a church to go to. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, you know, if you didn't go to church on Sunday and you died, it was a mortal sin, you go to hell. And this weird kind of stuff like that, when I used to kind of still wonder about if it was true or not. I shed that pretty soon after that. But yeah, that's what I learned from Maynard. And going along with that, I would say his ability to adapt to what is, and turn apparent liabilities into assets. And one of those that I learned from Maynard, but didn't really didn't understand it fully until recently, was how important it is to relax your chops as you go higher. And the difference between, well, I'll ask you, what's the difference between the end of a 5-hour gig and 5 days off with your chops? What's the difference?
End of a 5-hour gig.
You're tired, right?
Yeah.
Is my point. Your chops are tired. Are they weak? What's the difference between weakness from playing too much and weakness from not playing enough? There is no difference.
Right.
So that's why the protocol is so good, because in those two situations, the protocol comes through. If you play with relaxed chops, small mouthpiece, big hole, V cups are preferred, and they're absolute best for full implementation of the protocol. That's it. You've got it dialed in. I mean, there's nothing else. The rest is easy, right? The middle part, when you had enough practice and you had enough rest. But Maynard used to do this. This is his ability to adapt. Maynard used to do this in 1974. We'd have a break that would be 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it was, and he wouldn't play at all. And he'd come back and he'd do the sound check, if there was one, and he'd play a little bit, and you could tell he's holding back. He's not really, you know, he's playing at moderate volume, which is still plenty loud. And he had the front mic, so, you know, he can do that a little bit more easily than if you're in the back row, not knowing if you're going to have a mic or not. And so I watched him do that, and I'm thinking, how does he do this anyway? And now, many years later, it's because he played a small mouthpiece with a big hole. So the mouthpiece purses the chops. I have a video about this, but in case people missed, this is the mouthpiece, right? If you have a conventional cup like this, and here's your chops coming in, they want to get blown open by the conventional cup. If you have a V cup, they come like this. What happens? They're held in place by the V, by the structure of the cup. So you don't have to, you have to play with minimal lip protrusion to do it. And it's the perfect setup. And Maynard told me one time when he originally gave me the Colicchio that he played on Kenton's band, and I ended up giving it back to him later. I think Roger got it. But he had given it to me, and I was trying to convince him to keep it because I went to his house in Ojai and we're playing mouthpieces and horns like two little kids, right? And because I just gotten a large bore Martin committee, which I really liked, and he didn't like them because they have flat high D. So, you know, you can play it open, Maynard. Anyway, so we're playing, going back and forth, and I said, here, I play this one, because he had given this to me on the last day of of the gig in December 20th, 1974. And so he played it, and I'm listening, and I said, okay, now I'll do it on the chameleon piece. And the difference in sound was unbelievable. The 19 hole in the chameleon piece, essentially the same cups, right? 19 sounded huge compared to the sound of the 20 tight. It was a tight 24 in the Colicchio piece. So you learn these things. I hope I'm not meandering too far again. But,
oh no.
But that's, yeah, those are the kinds of things I like. Not necessarily that Maynard said something, but demonstrated. And going along with his ability to adapt, one time I made this mouthpiece for him. And our first gig back it didn't occur to me because I didn't even know. We were at Carnegie Hall. I guess it was Newport Jazz Festival or something. And I wasn't into all that stuff back then. I didn't know. I was just, okay, where's the gig? Where do I have to be and when? And I made a mouthpiece for Maynard on my drill at home spinning. And I took one of the other Holton prototypes that I had gotten from Sandy Sandberg and cut it down a certain way. And I thought, this is what Maynard should be playing. So it had a really sharp bite. It had a really flat rim, I mean, really flat, which accentuated the sharp bite. And it was still kind of a V cup, but it had a little bit more volume for the cup, right? And I had it shaved down so it would butt up against the lead pipe. We both had MF4, so it's about the same. And I gave it to him when we got back at the sound check. And I said, hey, Maynard, I made this mouthpiece for you. Sometime when you get a chance, try it, if you like. And he said, oh, yeah, thanks, man. And so he takes his mouthpiece out, the chameleon piece, right, puts this mouthpiece in, and proceeds to do Carnegie Hall on this mouthpiece, right? And Don Hahn insists that that's the best he ever heard Maynard sound. But after the gig, Maynard comes up to me, gives me the mouthpiece back, said, oh, thanks, man. That was it. So can you imagine that? I mean, can you imagine playing it? And this mouthpiece was, it wasn't a conventional piece, but it was leaning toward more convention than what he was playing, certainly, and a lot bigger and way sharper bite. And oh my God. And again, I was like scared to death that I'd screwed him up, right?
Yeah, but he just went with it.
Yeah, and so I learned that from him. And he told me the story of his house burning down. He had a house on the Hudson River, I guess. And he said it was the best thing ever happened to him. All his belongings, I guess, everything gone. He said, I have a clean slate. He used to talk about that. He used to talk about the clean slate. He says, your slate is wiped clean every 20 seconds, was what he used to say. He says, so you have a fresh start every 20 seconds. But we get burdened by our thought process. And, we think, well, this produced happiness for me last time, so I'll do it again because I think it'll produce happiness this time. And then when it doesn't, it becomes like disorienting or something, or disappointing, or whatever you want to call it, because you didn't get the same kind of happiness from it again. So that's a really important thing. Maynard was okay essentially okay with what happens. I saw him get bugged at his own playing like maybe twice, where I actually saw his ego come in. One was in his hometown, and he didn't like live TV. But yeah, other than that, you know, he just took it as it came. And I think he enjoyed having me there. I think I kind of reminded him of himself when he was this age, because I was like pure as the driven snow, pretty much. And he had somebody to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back one time. The day that I went to Ojai, right? I drove in from LA. It was a long drive, almost an hour and a half, I think, from where I live in North Hollywood. I got there and he wasn't there. He'd gone into town in his Volkswagen van, right? He'd gone into town. I guess he forgot I was coming or whatever. So Flo gives me a glass of unfiltered apple juice and an art book and sits me down in this hanging tree chair, I should say. And so I'm waiting. Pretty soon Bentley comes around and says, "Hey man, you want to go swimming?" I said, "Okay." I don't have any trunks or anything. So he went and got some trunks for me or whatever, just shorts, you know. And so we spent the afternoon waiting for Maynard, seeing who could go the furthest into the deep end holding a weight, you know, because as you go deeper, you walk down like this. And it was fun playing. It was like, that's my kind of person, you know, enjoying life and stuff. And that's how Maynard was. And I was sure sorry to hear about what happened with Bentley. I was told it was a suicide. I can't imagine that. Not even for 1 second. Not in my experience with him. But who knows what happened those next few years.
Yeah.
But that's what made really important stuff. And when he gave me the book or told me about the book, I just kind of rolled my eyes, and because I wasn't there yet. But about 10 years later, I got there, and well, I'll never get there, but I got to the point where I was receptive to it. And from that point on, then my life changed quite a bit spiritually.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, man. Well, I tell you, we've got a couple of segments we got to get through. These are kind of our standard segments, but I could continue to talk with you about this kind of stuff forever. But I know that your time is valuable. But we want to get to this first segment, and this is brought to us by my good friend Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones, and this is called Sound Off. And we've actually touched on a lot of these topics already, but I just want to dial it in a little bit. So it's about your approach to sound and the suggestions that you would have for someone of how to achieve the best possible sound out of the trumpet as they possibly could.
Okay. Keep your chops relaxed. Use your abs and intercostals to produce the pitch. Chops basically do not change too much as you ascend, except you may have to unfurl a bit if your chops become too tense and stop the air. Keep your tongue, there's a lot of tongue arching talk going around. Keep your tongue low in the mouth, at least an octave lower than you think it should be. And Bud Brisbois, I think, proved that with the fluoroscope studies. His tongue was in the bottom of his mouth and he's playing above double C. Yeah, that's about it. Relax and go higher. It goes against all you know, but that's it. And if you really want to carry it out, get the X piece and reversible rim, and that'll force you into it without much thought.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. All right. Our next segment brought to us by my good friends at Venture Mouthpieces, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. This is geared up. Use the code Trumpet Gurus 21 to get 10% off your order. And this is about your concepts of gear. And we've been talking about mouthpieces and the structure and throats and things like that. And you've already kind of talked about some of the approaches that you've used. But if you if someone is thinking about changing their gear and their setups, what are some of the tips that you would give people to find the equipment that is best optimized for their playing situations?
Okay. If you take 5 days off and come back to your mouthpiece and it feels big, your chops feel weak, blah, 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 your mouthpiece is probably too big. Period. If you have reasons for doing that, if you're a legit player and you want a big dark sound, then you have to do a lot of chop maintenance, so that does not apply as much. Al Vizzuti plays quite a small mouthpiece, and he's all over the horn in styles and everything. Amazing. So that's what I would do. I would look at that and go, okay. And then I'd consider, I hate to keep plugging this X piece and reversible rim. If you can play what I play on the rim, you will own the upper register of the horn. Period. That's it. You'll own it. It's not something you'll strive for or whatever. You'll actually own it, because everything inside you then, everything comes from inside you, because the rim doesn't offer any support at all. It's an infinitely deep cup, and that's it. That's what I would do.
All right, awesome. And if anybody wants to check those out, links in the show notes, and you can find out all about the protocol and the X rims and X piece, and I can testify. I bought an X piece and used it not to play gigs on, but just use it as practice and things like that. And I felt a difference, so I can say that it does work. I'm sure if I invested a little bit more time and energy, it'd probably work better, but hey, that's a story of life right there.
Don't forget the rim. Most people dismiss the rim. They either can't do it or they don't think it helps. And man, that's key to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's cool stuff. All right, final segment. This is brought to us by Robinson's Remedies, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. This is our Robinson's Remedies rapid fire round. It's a series of questions that bounce all over the place. So Lynn, I need your quickest responses to the series of questions. Are you ready, my friend?
Okay.
All right, here we go. First question. Who's the biggest influence in your life that is not a trumpet player?
Roxanne.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth.
What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Blair Witch Project.
It's a cinematographer coming out at me.
Right.
If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Motorcycle racer.
Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Water.
You could have a dinner party, invite any 3 living people, any 3 people in the whole wide world could come to this party. Who would you want to have there?
That are currently alive now?
Currently alive now. Yes, sir.
Oh, boy. Eckhart Tolle. Kim Sperling. And that's a tough one. I'm stumped. There's so many in the 3 spot. I can't think of one. I'm supposed to be fast. I know. Donald Trump.
All right. And at this dinner party, you have 3 additional chairs, and you can have any 3 people that are no longer with us, any 3 people from history.
Maynard, Chase, and Roxanne.
All right. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Those are my only 2 choices.
Those lacquer, plated, or raw? Those are your 3 choices.
Oh, silver plated.
Okay. What's your favorite quote?
I put it on my emails. All races end in a tie. It came from Maynard. I don't know where he got it.
All right. What is your greatest fear?
the end of the decline out of this life.
You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
I snap my fingers and take away everyone's nature of retaliation.
A great power to have. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
Doing exercises.
All right. What aspect do you think is the most underrated?
Playing music.
All right. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Probably it would be to be a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, more aggressive.
All right. And while you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
Be more accepting of what is.
All right. And final question for you, Lynn Nicholson. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, if I cared about a legacy, I would want people to think that I was a straight shooter and did some good here in various ways.
All right. Well, you have as a player and as a designer and as a educator, you've certainly touched a lot of lives. So you are making a difference in the world, and I certainly applaud you in all that you have done and all you continue to do. So I want to thank you so much for your contributions and for your time today. It was great to get to know you personally. So this has been a joy for me.
Thank you, Jose. Pleasure was mine.
All right. Well, hope that you enjoyed this hang as well. Remember to like and subscribe and share. And we want to have more of these kind of conversations, so you get to know the people behind the music. And if you're interested in Lynn and what he's got going on, please check out the show notes, and you can check out more things about the MF protocol and his X pieces, multiple mouthpieces, and his Lynn's horn as well. So just check out the links, and who knows, might be exactly what you're looking for. All right, so thank you again for joining us for this episode of The Hang. And as always, folks, peace and slide grease. We out.
Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see The Hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.